Welcome to the Conditional Release Program, a podcast that delves into the netherworld of cults, crims and con artists. We don't like these people in the shows. We believe the best way to expose them is to hold them up to a harsh light, point our index fingers in their general direction and mock them mercilessly, take them down a peg or two until they cease to exist in any other form than the shit on our shoes. I'm Jack the Insider, otherwise known as Peter Hoysett for tax purposes.
And I'm Joel Hill, and today we have been dragged kicking and screaming back to the Canberra Cookers because they just keep on keeping on. Fuck off.
Yeah, keeping on being utter bastards with bloated senses of entitlements where they treat the nation's capital like their personal garage with ensuite for shitting and pissing just so they don't step in it.
Yeah, and we've got much more on today's show, including a Celtic SovCit who's crowned himself the King of Wales.
Hey, which is going to make Charlie Windsor, the Prince of Wales, a bit put out.
Ooh.
And we've got more. A lot. A ton. In fact, a plethora of stories of cookers from around the world today. Would you say there is a plethora, Joel?
Oh, si, a plethora. And we're going to get on with it. Was that racist? We're going to get on with it right now with the Conditional Release Program's weekly news.
It's actually from Three Amigos, so it's not.
No.
In sad and tragic news, the tragic bit being the cookers remain in Canberra and continue to stir up trouble with the locals.
Go home.
Who are merely going about their business, including picking up their kids from school in designated pickup areas.
God forbid.
Cookers' stupidity and arrogance was there for all to see when a dozen or so confronted a school mum who rather forcefully told them to get off the pavement so parents could pick up their kids from a school on Friday afternoon. That's the 11th of March.
Totally reasonable.
Indeed it is. But not according to the cookers who said, no way. They claim they can park anywhere because they are engaged in their democratic right to protest whenever and wherever, and fuck you if you don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think parking anywhere you like is a part of the implied freedom of political communication that you're talking about.
It doesn't give you free parking around cities around Australia.
I don't remember the High Court ruling on that. I just don't remember it. But look, I haven't read through all of them.
Yeah, it's no free parking.
It's in the judgment. It's comment 163.
Yeah, it's in the deeds and titles. Yeah. Yeah, the mum who goes by the Twitter handle of Mandy Metal was surrounded by 6 male cookers or more, including one idiot with a bullhorn who shouted at her from a distance of a couple of metres away.
Yeah, that was really
good.
Good
On you.
So
got his own little LRAD going there.
Yeah, little shit.
It got worse when a cooker, subsequently identified as Glenn Agnew, persisted in encroaching in the woman's personal space and then reached out and grabbed her arm, attempting to put her in an arm lock. And Mandy quickly dodged the attempt from Agnew. She had not laid hands on anyone, including Agnew, and the film showed Agnew making contact, which would, and subsequently did, constitute a charge of common assault.
But he was yelling into her face with a megaphone.
Very threatening,
saying, get away from the veteran, or whatever it was. I mean, take your hands off the veteran, I think they were saying. Yeah. And this is the sort of thing, like, that itself should be assault, because that is such an obnoxious thing to do. That is a disgraceful bit of behaviour, but it's totally normal in their heads. And Soz149 just sent us a video with a woman speaking to a non-existent crowd, saying basically what happened was this woman was unhinged, that she was walking in front of cars. Well, they were on the footpath. And not only that, but basically there was the footage was selectively edited, and Glenn was actually trying to safely restrain her. Fuck you. He grabbed her by the arm and started making some sort of weird twisting motion.
It's not
the video's on Twitter.
It's not going to pass muster.
Fuck this guy.
Look, I saw 2 separate lives, both filmed by cookers.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to pass muster.
They make their own evidence brief. It's very funny. But at the end of the day, they're already spinning this as that she was the aggressor, they've done nothing wrong, and he was trying to safely restrain her. No. What happened was she was telling them to get the fuck off the footpath, which was completely reasonable because they were doing something that's not only illegal, but stupid and annoying. And when they got called out by it, after a little while, their male fragility went into overdrive and they decided to take care of the situation by subduing the woman who was making them feel humiliated. Fuck them so much. That's my rant. This really pisses me off, man.
Yeah, it's really, really ugly behaviour. Agnew appears to be an ADF veteran and gets around with his medals on, all 3 of them. The Australian Service Medal, given for anyone who's in the ADF for 4 years or more. An Australian Active Service Medal, which means you go overseas, you're on a tour of duty, which he presumably received as a result of what looked to be an UNTRAC medal awarded by the UN for soldiers who oversaw and had a peacekeeping role in Cambodia's first democratic election in 1993.
Yeah, so he's served, but realistically wearing medals is LARPing. I mean, like, he's trying to make himself out of some sort of fucking war hero, and he's not. And that's what these people love doing. It's like Larter with his stethoscope. What are you going to do? Check someone's pulse? You idiot? Like, okay, you're a paramedic, but, like, you're hamming it up. Everyone hams it up in the movement. There's no truth to be seen in the truthers movement. It's just...
Yeah. Look, a bit of research reviewed Agnew had been a senior vice president of the Geelong sub-branch of the RSL. Friend of the podcast who goes by the Twitter handle Bothering Conspiracy Theorists got in contact with the current president of the Geelong RSL, Andrew Hands, and showed him the footage of the alleged assault. Hands replied, Glenn, that is Agnew, has not been a member of the sub-branch for a number of years now. Yes, he needs help.
Yes.
This has been noticed by a number of people who know him.
Mm-hmm.
I will check to make sure he is not on our media platforms. This is disturbing footage to watch. And that was from the Geelong RSL president, Andrew Hands. Agnew was arrested on the Parliament lawns the following day, Saturday, 12 March. Again, this was filmed by cookers, all of whom claimed the footage of the alleged assault would prove Agnew had himself been assaulted by Mandy. That was the claim they were making on Saturday.
Piss off.
But it was obvious the footage from two separate lives showed otherwise. And cookers are so cooked. They don't even believe what they see with their own eyes. You know, This is how deluded they've become.
They make up their own reality. This is the sad thing. And it's just like, what are we going to do with these people?
Yeah. Look, Agnew was remanded in custody overnight because there's no bail. Yeah, that is one solution, Joel. Because there was no bail magistrate available. He may have been bailed today. I don't know.
I think so.
It really just depends on the availability of a magistrate.
It's common assault. They're definitely getting bail.
His cooker mate sent a delegation to the cop shop on Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening to argue the toss over Agnew's charge, but they declined to provide statements to police, presumably because they had seen the footage by this time again, had a look at it again, and knew any other interpretation of events other than Agnew had assaulted Mandy, allegedly, might have them committing perjury or making false statements to police. So
even if they do genuinely believe it in their fucking weird adult brains.
Yeah, they did not make statements, which is telling.
It is very telling.
Agnew, who has a Facebook page dripping with Anzac sentimentalism, will now either A, plead guilty and hope to avoid a conviction, or B, plead not guilty, and on the basis of the lives, you can't see any other outcome than he will receive a conviction for assaulting a woman.
Yeah.
And this is what the cookers have got to. Otherwise, ordinary people pill to the eyeballs on misinformation and groupthink, running around committing crimes because they think they can.
And they think they can get away with it. And this is the thing that'll be interesting to see, whether this guy takes the real SovCit route and basically says, I'm not going to take some fucking lawyer. I'm going to represent myself. You have no jurisdiction over me. Show me your deeds and titles. I spit on your court. Or if he's going to go there and, like you say, just plead guilty, do what his lawyer says, say, I'm sorry, and move on. But the question, of course, is the judge going to see through his bullshit? I would say probably not. I would say they're going to sit there, give him, 10 lashes and move on, while this person's going to go back and do the exact same fucking thing next week. I mean, like, it's what they do. So, yeah, I'm very tired of this.
Yeah, or one of their number will. It was a Bozzy group, I think, and I believe... I may be wrong, but I believe Kangaroo was there.
I think he was the guy with the bloody megaphone who was yelling in her face. Otherwise, he just looked like another skinny, weird person.
Yeah, look, to be confirmed, but I believe it was that group anyway. So you're talking about this sort of disturbed group, Bozzy followers, essentially.
Yeah, basically violence fantasists and just general pieces of shit.
Yeah, and pedophile obsessives and all this sort of stuff who think, because they believe some sort of nonsense about crimes being committed by people in high places, that gives them the legitimacy to do whatever they like, wherever they like, to whomever they like.
Very well said. That's actually exactly, it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. They live in a comic book of their own fucking writing. It's just, God, I'm fucking bored of these people.
Yeah, we really have tried to avoid covering Canberra.
Go home.
Because there's only a handful of these people left. That others are living in camps in genuine squalor, and that becomes a real issue. That is when we'll have to address Canberra cookers again, Joel, because ACT and New South Wales Family Services will have to get involved in removing some of these people from these camps.
Big time.
It fails virtually every test of basic human hygiene. These people will begin to suffer illnesses. These people are, particularly the women, subject to very, very poor behaviour. The children as well. There are people there with disabilities. It just can't go on.
It's a cook animal farm. Next thing they're going to fucking, kill the fat kid. Like, it's just, it's insane. It's just insane.
Yeah, the conch too. Yeah.
Yes, the conch.
Yeah. But, Joel, huge news in the US today. And I mean huge.
Hey.
See, Donald Trump alleged it. Rudy Giuliani held a press conference outside a naughty bookstore to report it.
That was good.
And Sidney Powell threatened to release it. But listeners, we at the Conditional Release Program can finally release the Kracken.
Finally.
Actual voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election.
Stop the steal.
Well, we are doing a little bit of stealing ourselves because the story actually broke in the New Yorker. But we're prepared to accept the Walkley. And I know Joel is working on his acceptance speech right now.
Well, you see, Walkley Awards actually don't have speeches. You walk up, you get the award, and they kick your ass
the
off
only
the
one's
thing.
the gold. Yeah, but we'll get the gold.
And the book as well, which Lee Sales stole from my sister. Just saying. But honestly, the Walkleys, it's $200 for a ticket. The food is average at best. The beer is super dry. Like, come on. MEAA, spring for something with some hops in it.
I refuse to go.
And look, basically, I think we're looking at the Pulitzer because I reckon they've got probably some nice salmon, some craft beers. So let's aim for that because honestly, the
just
Walkleys...
put on a steak and chicken and...
Oh, it really is.
Honey carrots. Come on, guys.
It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Yeah, the Walkley Awards. Forget about them. Anyway, Joel would like to thank all the little people who made this all possible.
Bless.
Including Mark Meadows,
Yeah.
Donald Trump's former chief of staff, who seems to have registered to vote in North Carolina while not being a resident of the state and cast a postal vote in North Carolina, having listed his address as a trailer home. Meadows listed the mobile home in Scaly Mountain, North Carolina, as his physical address on September 19, 2020, while he was serving as Trump's chief of staff in Washington. Meadows later cast an absentee ballot in North Carolina for the general election by mail. Trump won the battleground state by just over 1 percentage point.
Oh.
Bit more than one vote. But anyway.
Bit more.
There is evidence that Meadows' wife, Deborah, did spend time with their children at the mobile home, but no evidence at all that Meadows had spent even one night at the address. The couple did not own the trailer and actually resided in Virginia.
Ooh, tricky business.
12 months after the presidential election, Meadows left Ricky, Bubbles, Trailer Park Supervisor Jim Leahy, and all the gang, changing his voter registration to his home in Virginia, just in time to place a vote for the Republican candidate, Glenn Youngkin, who thrashed Democrat incumbent Terry McAuliffe. So he's swapping around a bit, Joel. Yeah, North Carolina law requires that a voter live at their address for 30 days before the election in which they are voting. It is a felony to file a fraudulent voter registration application, though prosecutions are rare and typically do not lead to jail sentences. But for the past 2 years, Meadows has echoed Trump's assertions that the 2020 election was fraudulent and stolen and has spoken often about corrupted election results caused by, and this is a direct quote from him, people just moving around. Just like he did.
Yep, that's exactly it. So there you have it. The Kracken has been released. Finally, there is clear voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election. It did happen, and so far it has added to Trump's vote in North Carolina by just one vote. In the words of Ricky, I told her so.
I told her so. Yeah, I told her so. I did told her so. God. Anyone who hasn't picked up anything about that should be looking through their streaming services for a collection of Trailer Park Boys.
I think it's on Netflix. Great.
Yeah,
show.
I think so. I think
great.
so. And it's a collection of petty criminals who live in a trailer park in Nova Scotia.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Fuck off, Randy.
Jim Leahy is the greatest drunk I've ever seen.
May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. What a great man.
And he was actually a really nice guy in real life too. He liked rocks. He was just such a nice guy.
A lovely man and genuinely plays the best television drunk I've ever seen.
He's just great. He's just fucking great. Get on it.
Yeah, all right. We're still in the States, but further down south, amusing images hit the net of the arrest of Proud Boy leader Enrique Tarrio. Hands in the air, in his underpants, in the wee hours on Tuesday morning, Florida time, with a host of FBI agents arresting the 38 28-year-old who lives with his parents. Why don't neo-Nazis always live with their parents, Joe?
It is tricky to get sort of employment when you're in that situation. Like, you're famous for being a neo-Nazi, you're some Proud Boy fucking leader, and you walk into like a Radio Shack and you're like, I've just got a real passion for selling television. So they're like, oh, just Googled your name. You really like Fred Perry's shirt, don't you, mate?
I can see you've got a number of convictions here.
Yeah.
I thought it might have something to do with the motherland and the fatherland, that sort of
yes.
thing. And living in the basement of the motherland.
I guess they take these things quite literally, don't they? Yeah, I could picture it. Yeah, it's hard. Like, I mean, if you've got a giant swastika tattooed to your eyeball, I feel like that kind of thing does just stop you from having a gainful employment life. But yeah.
Illinois Nazis. I hate Illinois Nazis.
I hate Illinois Nazis.
Yeah, but in the case of Tarrio, it may have been because he had just completed a 4-month jail term after pleading guilty to 2 charges, one involving burning a Black Lives Matter a banner stolen from Asbury United Methodist Church, and the other charge of attempted possession of a large capacity ammunition feeding device, according to the US Attorney's Office's press release. He was just getting back on his feet. And then this happened, Joel, poor little Nazi, charged with conspiracy now for his alleged role in planning the Jan 6 insurgency, the Justice Department announced after he'd been handcuffed and whisked away. Although Tarrio is not accused of physically taking part in the breach of the Capitol because he'd been arrested over this other matter that he subsequently served the 4 months. He got sentenced to 5, served 4. Yeah, he wasn't in DC at the time. The Justice Department said Tarrio, and I quote, conspired to corruptly obstruct, influence and impede an official proceeding, the certification of the Electoral College vote. As the leader and creator of a special chapter of the Proud Boys known as the Ministry of Self-Defense, so many weird names they have, the 38-year-old, and I'm quoting now from the charge sheet released by the US Justice Department, led the advanced planning and remained in contact with other members of the Proud Boys during their breach of the Capitol. The Justice Department also said he claimed credit for the attack on social media and in an encrypted room during and after the attack. Oh, don't do that, Tarrio. You've left evidence there. And Tarrio was indicted on 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding and another count of obstruction of an official proceeding. He also faces 2 counts each of assaulting, resisting or impeding certain officers and destruction of government property. Since the insurrection, the Justice Department has arrested more than 775 individuals in nearly all 50 states for crimes related to the events of that day. More than 245 of them have been charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement. On the same day as Tarrio's arrest, a jury found the defendant guilty in the first trial over the events of Jan 6. This was a ripper. And that man found guilty was Guy Wesley Reffett of Texas. And he was found guilty of travelling to Washington with a fellow member of a far-right militia organisation called the Texas Three Percenters. And 49-year-old Reffett of Texas was found guilty of 5 criminal charges: transporting a firearm in furtherance of a civil disorder, obstruction of an official proceeding, entering or remaining in a restricted area or grounds with a firearm, obstructing officers during a civil disorder, and obstruction of justice, hindering communication through force or threat of physical force. Reffett was convicted to a very large degree on the testimony of his own son, Jackson, who had become alarmed about his father's behaviour before the insurrection and his boasting and even threats to his son afterwards, telling Jackson traitors would be shot if Jackson gave him up.
And that's just how pilled these people get. I mean, like, the thing that I find so fascinating, and once again, this is how pilled these people get. Enrique Tarrio is a black man who headed up a chauvinist white supremacy organization. Now, you can say the Proud Boys are chauvinist first, but at the end of the day, they're absolutely white supremacists. And while we give them the neo-Nazi tag, it's a little bit tricky, but I tell you what, within their ranks, there is a shitload of Hitler boners. And there's just you just can't dance around it. They fucking exist. So, okay, we're maybe making a bit of a reach there, but what I have to say here is a black man that heads up a white supremacy organization just makes no sense. But nothing these fucking people do makes any sense. They're just ridiculous fucking cartoon characters. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm getting more and more frustrated, man. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. Stop parking on fucking
Well,
sidewalks.
one of the sort of right's responses to this, to the insurrection, was that it isn't or wasn't an insurrection.
Oh, yeah.
That there were the people weren't armed. Reffett actually attended the Capitol building with a pistol, loaded pistol, and he had an AR-15 in his car.
Oh, good.
Ready to go.
That bloke with the zip ties. It's just such an iconic picture, you know? Like, come on.
Yeah, and he was recorded talking about why he kept the AR-15 in the car, because he said, if things heat up, I'm going to grab that.
Yeah.
And he kept it handy.
Yeah.
So he's the first one to go down, and it's likely that this will bring about a number of pleas from other people charged, that they now can see that they're going to get stitched up in the courts. So you would expect a number of plea agreements, including, well, one has already come past that another fellow who is a member of the Oath Keepers has actually flipped. He was, when we mentioned him in last week's program, Roger Stone's bodyguard briefly, and he will have some stories to tell about what Stone was doing, what Trump was doing. Yes. In the meantime, Reffett will be sentenced in June. He's facing up to 20 years in prison.
Well, may he get 18 of those bastards.
He's going to get quite a few.
He should. He deserves every bloody minute of it, the prick. And finally, mention of an article by a friend of the podcast, Tom Taneke, who wrote an excellent article in the Independent Australia. All his articles are excellent, but this one really just takes a cake. It's regarding another good friend of the podcast, although not quite so friendly and very, very small, Avi Yemeni.
Yes, tiny weenie.
Tiny weenie. Who turned up in a flood zone in New South Wales, filming himself in puddles, just wearing fucking tight jeans for some reason. Why? And he's just trying to make this like elaborate point that, you know, the government responses to the floods are basically inadequate due to or at least due in part to vaccine mandates. Of course, small government being the real aim as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay though, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's heavily editorialised reporting, but that's okay.
The response has been pretty shit.
You can sort of get to that. I mean,
there's a narrative.
Yeah, well, Taneke's piece actually described Avi as being in the Central Coast, so he was nowhere near. He was actually, He was nowhere near
because he was making his way up there.
Lismore, and nowhere near Brisbane.
But this is the thing: like at the end of the report, like Yemeni called for donations to rebel media.
Yep,
himself.
This is the disgusting
crew,
part.
Blah, blah, blah. Probably his giant bodyguard, I don't know, lift him up above the floodwater or something. But, like, he's basically saying to cover costs of this report, this, like, essential piece of journalism that no one fucking asked for. This is in a flood zone while thousands of people have endured extraordinary hardship. You've seen the footage. It wasn't taken by Avi. They've lost their homes and everything in them. And in some cases, people have lost their lives because they had nowhere to fucking go. And, of course, in amongst this sadness is an obvious and glaring need for immediate financial support. And there is Avi, fucking Yemeni, in his little tight jeans with his dead shit fucking cameraman begging for money, pay for his ambulance chasing journalism. I mean, look, we've asked this question a million times. How low can he go? I just don't know anymore. I mean,
it's impossible to tell.
He can't ride the exciting rides because he can't quite meet the height quota. But like, even then, I mean, the chip on your shoulder is too big. And each week, he just continues to surprise us by being a bigger and bigger cunt.
Yeah, imagine the front of the guy. You know, each week plumbs a new depth, but this was a new low.
Absolutely.
And he has gone lower than ever before by some margin. And that is to turn up in a flood-ravaged zone, not where the real disaster had occurred by the sounds of things, and said, we're reporting this, you know, with his usual take on, you know, anti-vax takes and anti-lockdown takes.
Just making up bloody anxiety porn.
Which I get, and that's all right, but at the end of that, please don't put your hand out and say, can you pay us? Can you sling us a few bucks for reporting this? While we're actually at a flood zone where people have suffered. It is just disgraceful.
You're a fucking scumbag, Avi. Honestly, you're a real piece of shit.
Yeah, and we'll put the link up to Tom's article on the shitposting site so you can get as angry about it as we are.
God, this week's pissed me off.
Money! I'll do anything for you. God! Money! Just tell me what you want me to do.
And today's conditional release program is proudly brought to you by capital punishment. Nature's way of saying, get off my lawn. Yeah. Back in the good old days, people loved a good old-fashioned hanging. And the gallows in Darlinghurst in the early 19th century were fit to burst with crowds baying for a necking.
Oh, sweet.
It was like a fun day at the footy before there was any footy.
It was necky. Necky, they called it.
You go to a necking.
Yeah.
And while we're at it, why not bring back capital punishment's ugly stepsister, corporal punishment, every Tuesday around at my place? Thank you, ma'am. May I have another?
You can actually pay for it down at Abercrombie Street. Just so.
That's right. It's incredibly expensive.
Yes, it is.
But for your serious crimes, like being part of a secretive pedophile cabal who torture kiddies and drain their blood as a hobby, we know who they are. The 28 names on the back of Bill Heffernan's beer coaster for a start. A good necking is the only way to go.
Yeah, I mean, like the idea that they're suppressed names, only suppressed for normies and losers. Get an internet connection. We know all about it.
Yeah, hang 'em. Hang some sense into them, I say.
That'll teach them.
And this sponsor's announcement is proudly brought to you today by Bunnings, who sell rope and all your timber needs for gallows and trapdoors.
Fair.
Feel the quality of the nylon single braid at just $3 a metre. I'd be proud to be hanged by the neck with that silky smooth cord.
Bless.
And for the ladies, why not go the 100% organic jute twine, now in footy club colours.
Oh.
As Ricardo Bozzi always says, hanging's too good for 'em, but let's frog march up a couple of thousand pedos up to the gallows and give it a shot anyway.
Yeah, if it's good enough for the Saudis, it's good enough for us.
I think one of the first things it says within the Constitution is all laws within.
And with the velvet tones of Uranus-sized brain genius, Thanos Paniades trembling our tympanic membranes, it means it's time for Which Black Bill Fuckwit Said That, the quiz program that's educational and fun. So much so, Education Minister Simon Birmingham is considering putting it on the syllabus so little kiddies won't have to be bludgeoned around the head and shoulders with communism by the lefty teachers who want to teach them that Australia is a shithole, whose real history is a series of rolling massacres of Indigenous Australians, which it is, but you shouldn't tell little kiddies that.
They don't need to know.
They don't need to know.
No, God forbid.
And if you're successful in today's Which Black Bill Fuckwit Said That, Joel, you'll be hanged by the neck until dead with a number 3 silk-like thermoplastic rope in black velvet.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. You'll feel that plush grip around the neck just as you drop and shit your pants. And in that brief moment you have left to live, you'll think, gee, this is really comfortable and supportive too.
I would have liked it if it was in North Melbourne colours, but, fine. Whatever.
We'll see what we can do.
Okay, cool.
All right. Now, first quote comes from listener Philip, who buried the quote so deep it was like finding a trafficked child 10 kilometres below the Earth's surface.
That's what public shaming will do. We were very harsh on Stuart. Stuart's a very good friend of the podcast. He's fantastic. But
he flipped
we made a real example of that one.
He cut and pasted the lyrics from I'm an Arsehole, Dennis Leary song. That's the whole thing there it was. And I had to scroll all the way down to get to it. And here is the quote, Joel.
I used to love that
song.
So
it's, in parentheses, vaccine becoming mandatory. And to me, we've got a free country, and that doesn't happen face masks are mandatory. Someone said to me the other day, which I thought was amazing, when AIDS was around, they didn't make condoms mandatory. They just, they urge you to wear them, and yet AIDS was 100% killing you. You got it. You're finished. And yet now, face masks are mandatory.
I fucking hate this person so much.
This just make a ton of sense. And was it the man who wrote a play about suicide and yet laughed at shutting down a fundraiser for Lifeline when he argued lockdown should end for people's mental health? Michael Gray Griffith.
I hate him so much.
Was it I Think I Lost My Documentary in the tunnels Dan Andrews uses to traffic the children, and that is why it hasn't been released yet? Lizzie Rose. Oh, there's some crowdfunding money. We don't know where that's got to. Was it really? When will I have time to have said this all with the selfies I've been taking on Pete Evans' jet ski, Dave O'Neeks?
Yeah. Fuck you, parasite.
Or was it protecting Russia's interests? Putin isn't such a bad guy. Maybe he listens to my podcast. Maybe he's listening right now. Craggy Pete Evans.
Oh, man. Okay. It's kind of hard.
Could be any one of those 4, really, couldn't it?
I don't think it's Lizzie, and maybe that's my famous last words, but I'm going to go Michael Gray Griffith.
Wow, well done, Joel. That's excellent
Nice.
work. Excellent work. You can just see that garbage spilling from that idiot's mouth, can't you?
Oh, he's a fucking moron. And this is a kind of hot take that dipshit would say. See, Dave O'Neig's, he is a bit more of an idiot, and the way that he puts things, it's more like it's written in crayon. Craigie Pete Evans, this is way too direct. He would have been vague about it and been like, oh, well, just ask questions about
Just
AIDS.
asking questions about AIDS. Yeah.
And Lizzie Rose is just a babbling fucking lunatic. So, like, like, she'd be yakking about fucking Pentecostal goats by this point. So, yeah, MGG, checked out.
I'm just really disappointed to see some of my writer friends who follow Gray Griffith on Facebook.
Really?
Yeah.
Jeez, that's alarming.
Wake
I
wake up! This guy. I'm working in theatre anymore. No matter how long it goes, no one will go and see this guy's stuff anymore.
It's the same as the Underground Film Festival guy, that Richard Wollstonecraft. Like, unless you unlike his shit, basically, if you were into underground film festivals in Melbourne, maybe you threw him a like, maybe you added him to your friends list. You might not realise he's actually a Nazi now who regularly goes on Cafe Locked Out with Michael Gray Griffith. But this is like a guy who sort of just like randomly turned up and just went, oh, by the way, I love Hitler. And everyone went, you probably shouldn't do a film festival. And he went, well, I guess that's probably the case. Like,
yeah.
Another person who ruined his life just to be pilled.
Yeah, all right, Joel. Look, you've just had a stiff scotch and you're taking the last walk down the Green Mile.
I want my final meal to be nachos, if just on the record.
It's very common to get the KFC out in the States anyway.
To be honest, it would be so bad by the time it got to you because KFC is a fresh or never thing. If it's been in the Bain Marie for a while, it's trash. Yeah. Get that cold KFC, man. Your last thought when you get to the gallows will be, I should have got something else. It'll be your last thought.
I really need to go to the toilet.
The nachos is going to really make me shit myself spectacularly on that at that last moment.
Quite true.
Yeah.
Here we go. We need to build more gallows to make an example of these traitors who've betrayed our country.
Wow. Okay. That's good for
which country,
the economy.
Ooh, that's the question.
Which country? Okay.
Was it Australia's own Albert Pierrepoint? Actually, an Albert Pierrepoint wannabe. And for those who don't know who Albert Pierrepoint was, he was England's hangman in the 1930s, 40s and 50s who executed up to 600 people.
Jesus.
That's 25 a year in a good year. Was it Pierrepoint's Aussie wannabe Ricardo Bozzi?
Yes, yeah.
Or was it so unpleasant she even earned a censure from Arizona Republicans?
Oh, wow.
Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers.
She's such a fuckwit.
Or was it put a shirt on if you're going to go hanging, folk, Wollongong concreter and capital punishment fan Kangaroo Graham?
Loves it. Loves a good hanging.
He does, he loves it. Or was it Oregon's favourite QAnon hustler and failed Senate candidate Joe Ray Perkins?
Oh, I mean, it just feels like Bosey's the obvious one, right? But I must say, it could be Kangaroo because he's a big fan and he just says stuff that Bosey sort of likes. I'm going to go with Bosey. Fuck it.
No!
Damn it.
It was, in fact, recently censured by her own party.
Really?
Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers, who's having a crack. He's having a crack for a Senate spot, a federal Senate spot from Arizona. Unlikely that she'll get through the primaries, but
You'd think not.
Trump thinks she's terrific.
Oh, of course he does. He loves a good hanging himself.
He loves a bit of a hanging. Which brings us to quote 3. So you may have dodged the noose, but you're still walking up and the bloke in a march is saying, you got any last words?
If I get this one, I reckon I'm still in it. I reckon it's just going to be a failed hanging where the rope snaps, but I don't have a good day.
What's that line? Is it your first time?
First.
Anyway, okay. I reckon you'll get this. They call it the gay national anthem. YMCA gets people up and it gets them moving. Was it the guy who played the construction worker? Was it the guy who played the Native American? Was it the guy who played the traffic cop? Or was it the guy who played the President of the United States?
I mean, it's got to be the last one. Come on.
Well, there you go, Joe. You're headed for the drop. Well done. Yes, you got that right. Excellent work. This is how the Trumpsters travelling these days. He was on the Nelk. He was on the Nelk Boys. He was doing a YouTube with the Nelk Boys.
Who are what? Who? What?
Oh, they're kind of YouTubers, frat boy,
Some Zoomer
pranksters,
bullshit.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Largest
fuck them.
sort of audience in the millions. But
Probably, yeah, bigger than ours, I'm sure.
well, yeah. But
Tell your friends.
But why? I mean,
Yeah, I know.
why would the Trumpster? And so, in order to, they ask him some questions about music, and he goes on, I like a lot of show tunes and all that sort of stuff. But if I'm playing DJ down in South Florida, then basically I'm putting on YMCA, gets everyone up on the floor.
That is very funny. I'm pretty sure they had some village people on his campaign trails as well.
He describes it as the gay national anthem.
Oh man! Imagine an actual gay nation state. Imagine how fabulous it would be. I'm all about it.
He's a weird fellow, but yeah, it sort of tells you where he is at the moment. The old Trump Twitter's not working all that flat.
And they say Biden's the one with dementia. I mean, come on, this guy is just cool.
The gay national anthem is YMCA. I just had to put that in. I knew you'd get it right because it probably was the construction worker. Probably thinks it's a reasonable tune, wouldn't be embarrassed by it. The Native American, the traffic cop, or even the leather guy. But it was actually the
I feel like it was a gimme designed to put me toward the gallows. I figured that if I got one wrong, you still wanted to see me swing by the neck.
I'll clean up your trousers. All right. Now, we asked listeners to send us an email if they've come across something really, really stupid said by Black Bill Fuckwits. Mm-hmm. We want your input, listeners. If you've recently come across something posted that is so odd, so bizarre, that it can only be appreciated by the criminally stupid, drop us a line.
We'll send you a stubby holder and some assorted stickers and shit if you make our lives easier and send Jack a quote we can use on the show. And we remind listeners that the Conditional Release Program stubby holder is the only stubby holder on the planet clinically proven to keep drinks cold.
Clinically proven, and that has been proven. And furthermore, the Conditional Release Program stubby holder can be used as a noose, just a little comforter around the neck, just to stop that sudden jolt that you'll feel, and you'll go, oh. Yeah, thanks for that.
And if it's in public, we might get some listeners.
I haven't had my neck broken. I'm just strangling. So there you go.
This is dark. And we asked listeners to drop us a line if they do want to contribute to which Blackpool Fuckwit said that. You'll get a little shout out and a stubby holder. And if you mark it to the attention of Jack at our email address, theconditionalreleaseprogram@gmail.com, we would love to hear from you.
And now we bring you a segment of people who have learned absolutely everything they read in a quick flick through the Magna Carta, an 11th century declaration written entirely in formal Latin that cookers think they can understand if they sound out the words while trying to remember the words on the menu in the Italian restaurant they ate in that time.
It's the crown lager of languages, my friends. They're SovCits and they're on a collision course of reality and a concept totally bizarre to them, which is consequences. In this week's SovCits Be the Man.
We fired you, we sacked you, we dismissed you as what? As garbage, because that's all you are. You're a criminal, you're a traitor, and you're going to the biggest barbecue in history. So from Christmas dinner to you are the dinner.
Thank you, that's what I'll go with.
Big thanks to Celery Sorbet on Twitter for this one. Love your work, always.
Yes, look, she did pop up a story and I had to have a bit of a deeper look, and I did. And Joel, what happens when a SovCit meets arcane and ancient Celtic laws? Well, if this pans out the way it probably should, it's going to mean the Celtic SovCit is going to be living in a van down by the river on freehold title, because old Welsh tradition says if a person can build a house on common land in one night, the land then belongs to them.
Oof.
Other oddities in the tradition are that the test of ownership is if a fire still burns in a hearth by the following morning, then the squatter can extend the land around by a land they own by the distance they can throw an axe from the four corners of the house.
You want to get that throw right, you don't want to flub that flow.
Wouldn't want to just flop it out.
You don't want to John Howard that bowl,
you don't want to John Howard that one. You really want to give it a good hurl.
Give it some distance.
Matt Christopher, 34, fronted the Haverford West Magistrates Court, that's in West Wales, earlier this week, over several breaches of a community protection notice, a sort of UK version of an AVO telling him to stay the fuck away from a designated area rather than people. But Christopher, who refers to himself as a free man on the land and King of Gimray, which is the Welsh for Wales, to be specific, he calls himself King Arthwys I, is sticking to his Celtic version of sovereign citizenry, claiming he can go wherever he bloody well pleases, as he's the fucking king already. How can you tell he's the king, Joel? Well, he's the only one who hasn't got any shit on him.
And he said so. I mean,
That's right.
he said so. So, I mean, that's the burden of truth in these sort of movements.
Yeah, the community orders were first put in place over a 10-acre stretch of common land pockmarked with houses in Western Wales after the king deemed the pathways which crossed the lands were his, but he gave permissive rights for people to use the gates, and he was the one that made the pathways safe, he claims, while establishing tolls for others, which made local residents a bit upset.
Oh, you just imagine it.
He's just trying to make his way, make your way into your own home, and there's a bloke there, calling himself the king, probably got a bit of ermine around him, and just putting his hand out saying, that'll be a couple of quid, mate.
Honestly, like, we think our cookers are bad for parking on the footpath, and this fucking asshole's asking for fucking tolls. Oh, man.
He also believes he owns the gates around the common land, quoting Celtic law from the 8th century.
Jesus.
The police are denying his free man status.
Uh-huh.
The king declined several entreaties in court by the magistrate and the Wallopers to get legal representation, preferring to defend himself in court. There's a
As
surprise.
usual.
There's a surprise.
As
No, a man of my regal bearing, I'll take care of this myself.
Oh, yeah.
When the court tried to identify His Majesty's regal residential address, he stated he had, quote, many friends, unquote, where he could stay, and that he also owned a couple of properties.
Oh, a couple. That's nice.
Couple,
a portfolio,
got a couple.
they say.
Hurled the axe around from the four corners of the house and establishments.
I believe they call it a plethora of properties.
See, it is a plethora. But it was not made clear to the court where exactly these properties were.
No.
Haverford West Magistrates Court. Little tip for you, 2 clues. Van and river.
Yeah, that's the one.
And the court deemed Christopher to be of no fixed abode. His Majesty King Arthwise is living in a van down by the river. And His Majesty will be tried on June 20.
Ooh.
So we'll keep an eye on that.
We
It's going to
will
be a
keep
beauty.
an eye on that.
He's not going to get too much by way of penalty, but he's going to get a penalty because he's just really bugged the court. This is the 3rd hearing.
Oh, my God.
He turns up and he just keeps going, he demands to be addressed in regal tones,
Oh.
and just makes a complete goose. I have several properties. Where?
Several. A plethora.
Over there, and if you just let me an axe, and I can just throw it in the general direction of where one of my many properties are.
It's called surveying and conveyancing. Like, come on, man. This is what we do. It's axing. It's fine. Just outrageous.
You reckon he would have knocked up a few houses overnight too on some of this land and just said, that's mine.
Yeah,
just in your backyard. You wake up one morning and King Arthwise is living in a tent in your backyard and just claiming it as his own.
Brilliant. He's already just done it.
But we have to leave confused Celtic SovCits there because right now it's time to look at pizza cook and geopolitical hard man, craggy Pete Evans.
Oof.
He's had a huge week. Even his master, Vladimir Putin, said so. Da unego baila ogromnaya Nadalia.
Ooh.
You know what that means, Joel? He's
No,
had a huge week. And here it is on the week in Pete Evans.
And it has been a huge week in Pete Evans.
Huge.
With Pete throwing out some wild truth bombs, almost as usual, in a podcast appearance this week, which Cam, who is, of course, at Cam Lives here on Twitter,
G'day,
amazing friend of the podcast, endured to give us the lowlights reel of some of Pete's hot takes on some recent events.
Just so we didn't have to. Well done, that man.
I wouldn't do it anyway. It's just awful. We've been saying for a while now the rhetoric was going to dial up a notch as time went on because no one's dying from the jab. People are still dying from COVID, okay. And the conspiracy theorists are going to desperately lie through their fluoride-free teeth to maintain this whole depopulation narrative they've been pushing for all this fucking time. So let's start with Pete and vaccines. He's still pushing the idea that death jab is going to kill us all.
Yeah.
And COVID's not killing anyone. He said in this podcast that apparently 90% of COVID deaths aren't really COVID deaths. You die with COVID, and even those ones need more investigation. What does investigation mean, Pete? You couldn't investigate your way out of a fucking paper bag, you piece of shit. But the whole thing is basically just saying that we are going to live in a world where only anti-vaxxers are left. And I honestly would rather, I will take a fourth shot to stop that happening.
I'm out.
Yeah, boost me, because I don't want this. I do not want this. Like, I mean, ugh. So Pete jumped at the chance to vaguely link Warney's death, and that was a bit of headline news because people wanted to talk about it. And that was, of course, because of the jab.
That's why he did it.
Yeah, he's a fucking asshole. And he wasted absolutely no time associating the death of Victorian State Senator Kimberly Kitching with, various alarming statements about how everyone's going to wake up and all this death that's soon to follow. And I was like, Pete, mate, we all knew you were going to do this, you predictable fucking fart.
Predictable.
So fucking predictable. Predictable fucking Pete. But through the pandemic, it was all about how heart disease is like the biggest killer. You know, that whole thing of like, the whole pandemic response is such an overreaction because look at the main deaths. It's heart disease that kills people. Stop eating hamburgers. And now, apparently heart disease is this like weird new thing that only exists because adverse reactions to the vaccine.
Never happened
What is
before.
it, Pete? You can't have both. You can't be like, oh, this is the leading cause of death, and now be like, oh, but it's all because of vaccine reactions. Fuck you. Like, just use your brain. Actually, no, that's asking way too much. So obviously this hot take is just a despicable one, as, well as being incredibly stupid and all. But it's not the last time we're going to hear it. It's absolutely not the last time we're going to hear this, because these opportunistic parasites are going to jump on every celebrity death or any death of note, and they can make it so it's all about the jab. Unless they basically have, like, a velociraptor eat their head or they're stabbed by a fucking glacier, it's gonna be because of the jab. But Pete's not just one-trick pony here. He's not limiting his offensive gibberish to vaccine hysteria, although it's a big part of his fucking platform. He's also ramping up the rhetoric on his pro-Putin war cheerleading. Charming. I love war. Peace, love, light, and artillery shells, you fucking cunt. So while Pete Evans has proven himself to be a vile narcissist and a stain of humanity at the best of times, this is a low even for him.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just scummy shit. So while most of the content that pushes his pro-Putin narrative is shared from other pages, he parrots stuff. Pete doesn't have a lot of original thoughts in his little tiny salmon brain, so I understand why he presses the share button more than he presses his QWERTY keyboard. But he managed to pull together a couple of comments on the bombing of a maternity hospital in Ukraine in this shitty podcast appearance that Cam filtered out for us, alleging that, of course, it was in fact a false flag perpetrated by the Ukrainians and the Azov Nazi fucking group as a propaganda piece. Now, fuck you, Pete. I mean, fuck you, Pete, so much. The evidence
that's really bad.
It's just gross. I mean, you don't know shit. All you did is you parroted some pro-Putin propaganda because you're a fucking moron who only believes in things that go against the mainstream narrative with, I don't know, what, reporters on the ground and people who actually fucking view it, like witnessing it in person. No, you know a lot more from your fucking Northern Rivers fucking hideaway in Yukon on a fucking mountain. So the evidence for this that Pete posted on his Telegram is just astoundingly weak. Pete doesn't need evidence. He just needs vibes, man. And this is like I was saying, man, because he posts basically because Hillary Clinton tweeted about it that it has to be false. It sounds like a joke, but this is actually his fucking logic. And this is the logic that has guided him to ruin his life. It's so sad to watch. Pete posted this real gotcha moment where one of the women pictured in the maternity ward attack just happens to be an Instagram influencer who flogs makeup for money on her profile, blah, blah. How does this prove that it was a false flag attack and that she's some sort of crisis actor? It doesn't. No. But in his world, you don't need proof. You just need vibes, bro. You just share stuff and just like everyone can make their own mind because like I'm just providing information. No, you're not. No. None of this comes as a surprise.
You're a propagandist, Pete. You're a pro-Putin propagandist.
You fucking are. You piss me off. So none of this really comes as a surprise because at the start of the podcast, the motivation behind the Week in Pete Evans for me was always this idea that Pete was someone people listened to. But this is when he still had like 1 million people on Facebook. He had a social media presence. People still respected him. They didn't think he was a Nazi. They didn't know. Maybe he wasn't even a Nazi then. Who knows? But the disinformation he peddled was inevitably going to be the talk of the town because he had such reach and influence. And that was the thing that people, he would post it and then it would become a thing. But unfortunately, those moments are gone. He used to be, as much as I hate to say this, a thought leader in the field of conspiracy theory. And now he's like sort of in the back seat, He's not the driver. He's
up the back of the bus, yeah.
Because nobody fucking cares anymore, mate. Like, you shared rubbish to your fairly small following. Look, he's got maybe 12,000 active followers on his page, and that's more than we have, to be fair. But it's a fraction of what it used to be. An absolute minnow compared. His desperate attempts to stay relevant completely missed the mark. He's just endlessly sharing Tucker Carlson videos. Who gives a fuck? Q-adjacent hysteria memes from fucking dodgy accounts. Like, Ghost Ezra and Tommy Robinson, and failing to capture the imagination of the movement that he seems to actually disregard as basically unimportant, uninteresting. You never post about the movement. Why do you expect them to take their cues from you? And it seems like the feeling is mutual because they don't seem to be checking your post, Petey. They're not taking their thoughts from you, champion.
They're not sharing, Pete.
No one's fucking interested. But as people aren't dying from the fucking jab, and his desperation to say, I told you so, still lingers in the background, we're going to see this idiot pushing these wild narratives built on complete lies to maintain a sense of fear and anxiety to the few sheep he still has left in his flock. Everyone's going to die. The world is evil, and life is fucking terrifying. This little fucker...
Peace, love, and rainbows.
Exactly. I mean, this little bastard had the audacity to share a meme from David Avocado Wolf that says, this is a quote, "My favorite conspiracy theory is that everything is going to be okay." I mean, is it, Pete? Because I just read your telegram and I'm fucking terrified. Everything you post is fear porn. How about you stop trying to scare the shit out of everyone that listens to you and just be fucking glad you're wrong about this elaborate depopulation campaign you fucking made up with your mates by these shady forces in powerful cabals of Jews, of course. No. He would rather see billions die because he wants to say, I told you so. Or, I told her so.
I told her so, yeah.
I told her so.
I told her so.
Fuck you, Pete Evans. You are just such... I'm so over these people.
Jalapenos. You want the jalapeno? Jalapeno. You want the jalapeno crisps, Pete?
Love jalapenos.
You have been listening to the Condition Release program with your host, Jack the Insider and Joel Hill. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. If you've enjoyed our bullshit, throw us a 5-star review on your podcast app.
Jack can be found on Twitter on @JackTheInsider and Joel on @CrunchyMoses with a K. We've set up a Facebook page you can find fairly easily, but promoting a podcast is easier said than done. We can't share this shit ourselves. It's embarrassing. We're trying, but if you share
it, this every week, but it is important.
Tell your friends. I mean, because when our numbers go up, it just makes it all worthwhile. And if you like the podcast, we'll keep doing it, but we need hearts and minds.
Yeah, the Patreon is up and running, and we ask listeners to consider throwing a few dollars our way as well.
Yeah. Look, for as little as $5 a month, you get access to all sorts of bonus content. We do this thing where we take the piss out of the People's Treaty. It's great. There's samples online, on the main feed if you want to get a bit of a taste of it. But it also really helps. And not only that, but when I get a little patron thing saying, we've got a $5 or $10, it warms me heart. And sometimes my heart needs warming because sometimes it gets a little cold.
Joel needs to have a warmed heart.
I need a warmed heart, especially after being hung.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You did sort your trousers as well.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
And if we get to 1,000 patrons, we promise that we will go up to Lismore and ask people for money.
Yes.
Just walk around looking at people who are just scraping the remnants of their belongings together out of the mud and saying, "Hey, can you drop us a pineapple?"
I'm also going to do this in $300 jeans, mind you. I'm just giving you advance warning.
Sure, you lost a house, but we produce a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of hard work. We
hard
deserve the money, so flip us a pineapple.
More than those flood nerds. Fuck them. So join up at patreon.com/the Conditional Release program.
And finally, all feedback, tips, and death threats should be sent to the Conditional Release program @gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, even if it's simply to inform us that you've just built a house on our land and have 10 minutes to get out, or you'll throw an axe at us. Fair is fair, though. Law is law.
Gotta follow the law.
Even if it's from the 8th century.
Look, law's law. Law's law. Thanks, listeners. See you next time.
Show us the deeds and titles.
Deeds and titles.
Deeds and titles. Thanks, listeners. See you next time.